get started. We might have some more people join us, but we will get started. Well, welcome. This is Homeschooling Your Pet, where we're going to talk about how pets learn and how we can use that knowledge to teach them what we want them to know. I'm Jessica Char, and I'm here thanks to a partnership with the Silicon Valley Pet Project. And we will just jump in. I will figure out there we go, do my slides. So today covers a lot. Like I said, we're going to talk about, yes, you can train your pet regardless of what type of pet you have. You should train your pet, how your pets learn, what to think about before you start training, as you start training, and as you continue training, and then there'll be time for questions at the end. I put this together in the last few weeks. Turns out it's a really big topic with lots of interesting information, all of which I wanted to share with you. But I'm going to have to gloss over some points and kind of just touch on a few others just to make our time. So if there's questions you have, throw them out there. If you want to continue this conversation, I'll give you some resources at the end to do so. But bear with me as we just do an introduction to how pets learn and how to teach them. Again, my name is Jessica Char. I have two training businesses that handle pet behavior modification and training, Canine Engineering and Feline Engineering. So one about dogs, one about cats. That's where we're going to focus most of our attention today. But of course, this training applies to lots of other animals, including my ever-present bunny, Dewey, who's in the picture there showing us his high five. You'll get to see more of him. I'm a member of the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants, the Association of Professional Dog Trainers. I'm a certified professional dog trainer, a fear-free certified trainer, and a certified separation anxiety trainer. I would love to know who you're here to learn to train. So I'm going to try to pull up a poll, which I just completely made a mess of. Let's see. Sorry, I've completely ruined my screen. Ha, I found it. Launch. So I put a lot of options on there. What do you want to learn to train? Give me a shout and tell me who you're sharing your house with. We've got some dog people, not surprising. Oh, someone out there would like to train a spouse. I hear you. Cats. Rabbit people? Anyone? Bueller? All right. Lots and lots of dog people. I am not surprised. For whatever reason. All right. So you kind of see lots of dog people in the group. Lucky for you, most of my videos are dogs, but I do want to reassure you, all of you, that it's not just dogs that we train in this way. We have the option to train many, many animals using these techniques. Okay, so speaking of, yes, you can, and yes, you should. So common question I get, especially about cats, is, can you really train a cat? Yes, you can. So I'm gonna make the argument that all animals can learn. This is how we survive. You learn where food is, you learn what's safe, what's dangerous. All animals can learn. If you can learn, you can be taught. And so teaching and training, same thing. Okay. So all animals can be trained. Now, all animals are motivated by something. Behavior is about seeking out something we want, avoiding something we don't. So everyone has their own motivations, and we can use those motivations as part of training. And yeah, the details might look different. Some animals perceive the world differently. They notice different things and they react to different things. They're motivated by different things. They have different physical abilities, but it doesn't change the fact that these principles of how to train are going to still apply. So just to get us off on the right foot, yes, your pet can be trained. So why should you? Safety and welfare. A come when called is an emergency behavior. It keeps your pet from getting lost or getting out into traffic. Being able to be calm at the vet, to even get to the vet, is a safety behavior that can be influenced with training. And training can be used to decrease conflict in your home, whether it's between different pets, between you and your pet, between your pet and other people. Increase trust and freedom. If you have done more training, you'll have to do less management or prevention, setting up your pet's world to keep them safe. Maybe if your dog is barking and jumping all over guests, you've been putting them in the other room so they can't interact with guests to prevent that problem. That is a useful tool, but some training will allow your dog to participate in the group activities, opportunities to do new things and go new places. And of course, training is fun. So we'll talk more about the fun of training and why training for fun is still a really worthy goal and could really get you someplace special. But I just wanted to start with a really fun video of this boy. Hopefully the video is coming through fairly well. But this is my boy learning to ring a bell. And when the treat didn't come fast enough, he tried to ring it a couple more times. So now he has a dinner bell and we will never sleep again. All right. So how do pets learn? There's kind of two big ways that animals and our pets learn. The first is learning by association. You can think of this as emotional learning, what things go together. If you've heard of Pavlov and Pavlov's dogs and classical conditioning, that's what we're talking about, is the pairing of two experiences so they become linked in an animal's mind. We usually think of this as the emotions tied to an event, a person, an animal, a place. So if you went into the vet or the dentist or the doctor's office and something painful happened to you, you're not just going to associate that pain with a needle or a dental drill. You're going to associate with that, with the whole location, maybe with the person who did it to you. You see your dentist in another location and maybe you cringe a little bit. Oh, I don't know, I don't feel good. That's us learning by association. It's outside the learner's control. We don't think to ourselves, oh, I just saw a cookie, I think I will be happy. It just comes. It's that association we have with seeing that cookie that's outside of our control. And the little graphic here kind of shows the connection that Pavlov made with his dogs and that we could easily make with our pets as well. Initially, we've got a little happy face about the cookie and sort of a neutral, or even this could even be a sad face about the bell. I don't really care about it, or even like I'm a little concerned about it. We pair those two things. The bell predicts the cookie is going to come. The cookie makes us happy. And after enough pairings, we end up with these two separate associations. I'm happy about the cookie, and now I'm also happy about the bell. So if it's a neutral situation, the bell didn't mean anything, and now we gave it meaning. We call it classical conditioning. If we were afraid of the bell, and we changed that fear into a happy feeling, that would be counter conditioning, classical counter conditioning. You've heard that potentially. Learning by association or emotional learning is why modern dog trainers and other pet trainers avoid punishment, aversives, i.e. something the animal doesn't like that the animal wants to avoid, or just negative experiences in general. So because we don't want to tie negative emotions into the experience, into the training experience, or related to us as the trainer, the teacher, or anything else going on in the environment, that's one of the reasons we are avoiding punishment. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. But the second way we learn is by consequence. So this is probably how you think about learning, which is sort of the more conscious decision-making learning. This is also called operant conditioning. So we have classical conditioning, we have operant conditioning. If you're interested in psychology, you can look it up in those books. But basically the idea of my behavior makes things happen. So when we talk about our pets, we're talking about them doing what works for them, not making moral decisions about right or wrong, but doing what works. Do what gets you what you want. Avoid doing what doesn't get you anything or what maybe results in something you don't want. So there's two categories of consequence. The consequence of the behavior could be reinforcement, which makes you more likely to repeat the behavior, to get that reinforcement again, to get that consequence again, or punishment, which makes you less likely to do that behavior because you don't want that consequence, or that consequence was unnecessary, uninteresting to you. It didn't mean anything. There's a better consequence you can seek out. And these things are often competing. The consequence of me staying in bed in the morning is that I'm comfortable and I'm cozy and I can get extra sleep and I'm very relaxed and it feels good. The consequence of me staying in bed in the morning is that my boss yells at me for being late. So there's reinforcement for staying in bed and there's punishment for staying in bed, and I am going to make a decision based on which is most important to me, and your pet is doing the same. So when we introduce consequences, we have to think about all the consequences the animal experiences. That being said, they can't be totally separated from this idea of learning through association or emotional learning. So if a consequence creates a certain emotion in us, that is also going to affect our learning. Again, that idea of a negative emotion being linked to other things in the situation. So I'm trying to teach a sit and I punish the dog for not sitting. The dog may learn more about their emotional reaction to me or to the environment or to the idea of sitting rather than the consequence of sitting or not sitting. This quote, Pavlov is always on your shoulder, is that thought that no matter what you're doing, even if you think you're only altering the consequence of the behavior and not working on the emotions are still playing a role. So just comparing these two types of consequences quickly and why we talk about reinforcement more than punishment. Reinforcement's easier. So if you think about the options your pet has, there could be 101 different things to do, but only one of them is the one you want them to do. So you're sitting on the couch watching TV, you want your pet to sit next to you and be quiet. They could bark, meow, paw at your face, run laps around the house, bark at the window, scratch the furniture. They have lots and lots of options. If you try to punish 100 of those things, you're going to be exhausted and frustrated. If you try to reinforce the one, you're going to get there much faster and be much less annoyed at the process. If behavior is both reinforcing and punishing, and we just try to punish it away, we have to overcome what the animal wants in the situation. And that can be really difficult because an animal might care much more about getting the attention than they care about us yelling at them, right? And then there's this idea of the slot machine effect. So that's why there's a picture of slot machines here. You imagine you don't get reinforced every time you use a slot machine, but the promise of occasional reinforcement is enough to keep your behavior really strong with putting that coin in, or I guess they're not actually coin operated anymore, but it's more fun to imagine. To truly punish a behavior, it has to be punished every single time. That's exhausting. What if you're not in the room and your dog is barking at the window and you're not there? What if you're not in the room and your cat is up on the counter? You're not there to punish it. Whereas if you focus on reinforcement and identifying what you want and reinforcing that, you can miss reinforcement and the behavior actually gets stronger. So it's just so much easier to focus on reinforcement rather than punishment. It's also safer. We've already talked about this. Those negative emotions that are created by some types of punishments can lead to fear. Fear can lead to aggression. It's not worth that risk to me. And it's more fun to focus on what you want versus what you don't, and not to be chasing your pet around trying to punish them. All right. So you know your pet can learn, you understand how they learn, you're going to use some reinforcement to teach them. What do we need to know before we even get started? First off, know your species and know your individual within that species. So every species is going to have different aspects in their attention span and their eating habits, their awareness of the surroundings, the things they can physically do, how they prefer to interact, and of course, safety in interacting with them. And I truly mean every species, right? We could be training your house cat, or we could be training a tiger, and we're still going to be considering the same factors. So let's compare cats and dogs, because that's who we've got in the class. Of course, attention span varies within an individual, but often it's easier to keep our dogs focused on us. They have a history of kind of cueing off our behavior more than cats as a species. Not talking about your individuals. Eating habits. Dogs tend to eat a lot whenever it's presented, just due to their scavenging history. Cats eat small amounts frequently during the day. So if we're training them, they're only going to want a few treats before they need a break, because they're not as eager to eat over and over and over much. Cats are much smaller. They tend to be considered both predator, but also a prey animal. So they're going to be very aware of their surroundings. And if you're training another animal like a rabbit or a horse, there are prey animals. They're going to be much more aware of the distractions in their environment and whether or not they feel safe. Physical abilities, cats and dogs are fairly similar in their ability to look and move their bodies around, but as far as their preferences for how we interact, cats often like to be at the same level as us. They might be more comfortable interacting with us up on a table or a chair or raised on their cat treat on a raised platform. We probably don't have safety concerns as a species with our cats and dogs living in our home, not like those tigers, but all this training applies in the same way to animals who we can't touch or get as close to. We can't physically manipulate into position or hold down. So it's worth sort of mentioning any species. As far as the individual, again, individual attention spans, individual motivation. I say dogs are superfood motivated, but your dog might prefer a ball. Physical abilities of the individual. Can they jump? Can they turn? Are they comfortable sitting, standing, laying down in certain positions? Preferences for how they problem solve. Are they going to quickly learn behaviors that have to do with using their feet, or is that going to be harder for them just because of their tendencies? Confidence. Do they feel comfortable taking food from you or approaching you for food? Are you dealing with maybe some fear-based behaviors there? Frustration. How quickly do they give up? Let me tell you, I've trained some rabbits, and rabbits give up very quickly. They try something and they want a treat for it. And if it was the wrong thing and you withhold the treat, they will give up and walk away. I suggest that there are definitely cats like this, and there are dogs like this too. And then safety, again, if you're working on a behavior that is related to your dog's issues around handling or your cat's issues around being touched, you want to really be sure that you're working safely and not triggering some sort of aggressive behavior there. So how are we going to reward our individual animals? At first, identify what's motivating to your animal. Food, play, attention, access to a certain space, say opening a door to a backyard. What else might be interesting to your individual animal? What do they seek out? Do they like the opportunity to sit up on something high? And they very quickly you could train them to hop up on something high because they just want to be up. That could be motivating to them. We talk about food a lot because it is just so accessible. It's so easy to use. We can give small amounts. We can give very specifically. It's there and it's done. What kind of food, what you want to use is going to depend on your learner. Hard treats, soft, squishy, smelly treats, lickable treats, often with cats because cats chew a little more thoroughly. They eat a little more slowly. A lickable treat is really, really useful. And you're going to see at the very end a video of a cat licking a treat off of a popsicle stick. The size of the treat often relates how fast or slow the animal eats. So for cats, very small treats. For rabbits, very small treats. They tend to take them and want to eat them and work on them and then come back to the next one. We want it to be a quick bite, enjoyable, but done. Placement of the treat. Dogs, you can often feed by hand or you can toss the food. You have a lot of options, drop it. Cats, you might want to put it on the ground, especially to start, because they do tend to kind of grab and eat, and that can be hard on your hands. They also, depending on the cat, might not chase a treat as well as a dog does. So putting it in a predictable spot for them to grab, or offering it on a tool that lets you feed it from a distance so that your hand is safe. And then food that's the right level of desirable. So this means your animal wants to work for it. They're like, you have that food and I'd like to get it. What can I do? But they don't lose their minds over it. So my bunny works for his pellets, his pelleted food that he gets every day. He'll work for that. That's what you saw him getting for playing with the bell. But he gets kind of silly if you bring up the strawberries, and he gets really intense and he just kind of wants to like jump on your hand and climb up in your lap, and he forgets all of his skills because he just wants the strawberry. So you want something that's in that middle zone of worth working for, but not lose your head over. All right. When and where are we going to train? Before you need it. This is key. So you're going to train the skills you want to use before you need to pull them out. Just like you don't learn to do math when you're working your first job at the cash register, hopefully, or when you're trying to do the tip for the first time on a receipt. Hopefully you've had some experience with numbers and math before you get there. And also, you're going to wait to train until your pet's needs have been met. So they've gotten some exercise, they've gone to the bathroom, they've gotten a nap if they need to. Think about a toddler. You don't train your toddler during a tantrum when they're just overtired or they're cold or they're hot or they're in an emotional state. We're going to deal with all of that and let them be ready to learn. Aware, quiet area, no distractions, and an area where the behavior is likely to occur. So if I was training my dog to go lay on his bed, I would do it in a smallish space where he felt comfortable and really the only thing there was the bed. I might not do it in my bedroom next to my bed where he likes to lay, because then we get some competing factors and he might just choose to go take a nap on the bed instead. I want to set him up for success. What should you teach? First of all, why are you teaching? Why are you training today? Are you hoping to stop a behavior that's kind of a problem? Are you hoping to start a behavior that you need in your life? You just looking to have fun? Identify your goal and then choose a yes behavior. That is a thing that you can train and tell your animal, yes, you did that right, here's a treat. So you need to know what you want your animal to do. If you're having fun or starting a behavior, this is obvious. If your goal is to stop a problem behavior, you need to identify the alternative behavior that you want. So you can't reward, well, you can. It gets a little trickier to reward not barking, but you maybe reward going to a particular spot or looking at you, things like this. What is the yes? It's helpful to build on what your animal already knows and does. Often their problem behavior kind of indicates what they're being motivated by. So if your cat wants to get on the counter, for example, the cat is being motivated by attention, food, the chance to get up high. We can take those things and apply them to a chance to sit up high on a nearby chair, for example. It would be harder to teach them to go run and hide under the bed instead of sitting on the counter, right? We're going to match somewhat what they're looking to do and meet those needs in other ways. Some foundation behaviors that I highly recommend starting with are going to be some sort of attention or focus behavior. Usually the animal orienting toward you, looking at you rather than at anything else. A go to place, go to spot, go to bed, go to mat. This is kind of called stationing. So take your body and put it on that spot and stay there. And then a target behavior, which I'm going to show you some videos of, but is the idea of taking part of your body and attaching it to an identified target. That target could be a stick, that target could be my hand. So we're going to jump into that. And Julie asked a question about applying these principles in a home with 2 dogs and teaching the same behavior. Yes, absolutely. So I recommend teaching each animal individually so they can really focus and learn, and then bringing it together. You have a lot of options for using different cues or how to bring those together specifically, and we'll talk about cues briefly, but absolutely principles all still apply. Okay, so hand targeting is really, really useful, but some people haven't heard about it, so I pulled a couple videos. We've got a kitty practicing hand targeting for the first time, and it's just that nose to hand, and then the treat comes. I took the sound off of this so that you can't hear what's being said, just so I can talk over it, but the goal we're looking for is just the nose to the hand. Here's a version, oh, there it goes, with a dog doing the same thing. So this behavior of approaching and touching with a part of your body is useful for control of the animal. So maybe a come when called can be built out of a hand touch, or Buster here is an SVPP foster dog, or was, and he can learn that hands reaching toward him are predictable and safe, and he can control that interaction because he's a little bit of a shy boy. What we're teaching them is to participate in an interaction. And targeting is how they train zoo animals to get medical procedures. If you've ever seen videos of the tiger leaning up against the bars and putting their shoulder out and having blood drawn, or checking their teeth or putting medicine in their eyes, that's targeting. And really, really powerful, just starting with touch my hand with your nose, touch my hand with your paw, anything like that. All right, now you know what you're going to teach, you know what you're going to use to reward, do it. Getting the behavior. 3 main ways of getting a behavior so that we can reinforce it. You can lure it, which means using the treat or the thing that you're motivating your animal with to move the pet around. So when I move the treat in my hand, the dog follows it with their nose, the cat follows it with their nose. You can use this to train a lot of body position behaviors or location behaviors. It's quick, it's really clear, it's usually not very frustrating because you're making it really obvious to the animal where you want them to be. You do need to fade a lure fairly quickly so it doesn't become kind of permanent in the animal's mind as part of the cue. This is what happens when people say, we did obedience training and my dog will do things, but only when the treat is there. That's not a failure of the training, it's just that the dog has never learned that it's necessary, that the behavior will pay off even if the treat isn't there. They just wait to see the treat and then they say, oh, now I know what to do. So we need to get that treat out. And we'll see a video of an example of removing the lure. Capturing is just waiting for the animal to do what you want and then rewarding it. So for example, if you wanted your animal to hang out on their bed and you just sort of were hanging out in the living room and you saw them go over and sit on their bed, you might walk over and treat them for doing that. That's capturing. No cues, no prompting, though we can later add a cue to behavior that we've rewarded and reinforced through capturing. We're generally just using the environment to set up the behavior. And you do need to set up the behavior to be likely to happen. Otherwise, your animal isn't going to realize that they're in a training session. They're going to disengage. They're not being reinforced, and they are going to be blowing you off and wandering off to dig in your garden. So capturing requires sort of setting things up so they're likely to make the right choice. Shaping can be used with either capturing or luring, but it's breaking things down in tiny increments on the way to a final behavior so that you're rewarding along the way. The animal doesn't get frustrated or lose interest because they're starting to be brought slowly to the final behavior you want. And it really helps them understand more complicated behaviors. So examples, in this video, this is Barley the Scotty, and she's going to demonstrate a lure to a down that involves a little bit of shaping. And then they think there's also a lure into a sit. And then we're capturing some loose leash walking. She's not actually on leash, just to be, there isn't a leash, but I'm capturing her behavior of walking next to me like she would need to on a loose leash. Oh, it's a little choppy, I apologize, but you see she's working on the treat. I'm kind of giving her some bits of pieces to work on, and then she goes all the way down into that behavior. She's rewarded finally for being there, and then lure to a sit. And then I move away. I'm not cueing her, but as soon as she kind of gets up and moves toward me, I offer her that reward. And I'm just giving it to her right where I want her, and she's keeping up with me. We turn back. She's being reinforced for walking right next to me, so she's happily kind of staying there. If there's nothing else to be done, she might as well stay close. So in the beginning, you saw her being rewarded for dropping her head, lowering her head a little bit more, slowly bending an elbow, and then coming all the way down into the down. So a lure with some shaping, and then being rewarded just for being where I wanted her next to me. Training is ultimately about really clear communication with your learner. You're setting up this sequence of a cue, the animal does the behavior, and then a marker, an optional tool we'll talk about, and the reward. A cue does not make behavior happen. Let that settle in. The cue does not make the behavior happen. A cue says, hey, if you do this now, you will get a reward. So I don't put money on the counter at Starbucks and just expect my coffee to show up. I wait for someone to come over and interact with them to get my coffee. They are a cue that I will get rewarded for paying for coffee in that moment. A cue can be verbal. Often that's what we think about because we're primates and we make a lot of noises. A cue can be a hand signal. Actually, our pets are very in tune with our hand signals, especially our dogs are typically watching our hands more than we expect. A cue can also be environmental. So I might say sit, expect my pet's butt to hit the ground. I might make my hand go into a particular hand signal and hope for my animal's butt to hit the ground. Or I might walk up to the front door, reach for the door, and want my animal to go into that seated position. All of those are cues that it's time to do that behavior. And if they do, a reward will come. A marker is a tool for telling the animal exactly when they did the correct behavior. So if you've ever been to a marine mammal show, dolphins or sea lions that are sort of going out into the water and doing a flip, and you hear the trainer whistle, that is a marker telling the animal, you did the behavior I wanted, good job, come back and get your reward now. So the reward, when they come back and they get the fish, the animal understands, I didn't get the fish just for coming over here. I got it for doing that flip. With our pets, a marker is useful in forcing us to clarify what we want and when we see the correct behavior. And then it gives us a chance to dig the treat out of our treat pouch or out of our container or walk to the fridge and get the treat. When you're first training, you want these things to be close together, but over time, the marker gives you a way to reinforce a behavior at a distance or reinforce a behavior when you might take a moment to grab a treat and offer it to your pet. If you've ever heard of clicker training, a clicker is a marker. It's not the cue, it's not the reward, it's not magic, it's not a remote control. It's just the marker that says, yes, you got it right in that moment. There'll be some videos where you'll hear the markers being used for these animals. And then finally, the reward. The reward is the last bit in the step. The reward is the consequence, the reinforcement that encourages the behavior to be repeated. It tells the animal what worked and encourages them to think of that as this thing they want to repeat. Just to be clear, this is the important part. The cue doesn't make the behavior happen, the reward does. So when you're trying to train, really focus on making sure your rewards are coming to match the behavior you want, and everything else will kind of fall into line. Okay, so this video is a quick 4 steps of the idea of go to place for this dog if they go to bed behavior, and you'll see the lure being used and then faded out. So first, the lure of a treat tossed onto the bed. You see her nose goes right down. She kind of steps onto the bed, but really she's just sort of moving toward it. After a few times doing that, we're going to fade that lure into sort of a fake toss. She's like, where'd it go? And then she sits on the bed, and then she gets rewarded. We can take that fake toss into a hand signal. And now we're getting this quick, eager, yes. And the last step is we're clarifying that the hand gesture is the important part and not any other part of the behavior. So we'll talk about that next. So you see in that video how the initial treat toss, the lure, got the behavior started so that we could reinforce it. But then we got rid of that lure. We faked it a little bit to keep the behavior going and continued to reward. And then we didn't have to use the lure anymore because the reward was what was keeping the behavior strong. All right, so you've got your brand new behavior. You're starting to have some success. Now what? Let me check my timing. Okay, I'll talk a little bit faster. First off, make sure you're clarifying the cue. If you're using a word and a hand signal at the same time, there's a high chance that your animal is paying attention to the hand signal only. But it's also possible that your animal is paying attention to other things in the environment. So it's useful to make sure that you are being really clear about what you want the cue to be and differentiating that from anything else you're doing. So your word is coming first, and then a lure or a hand signal, or your word is being very consistent. We're not saying down, off, lay down, and imagining they mean all the same thing. making sure that cue is really clear to your animal. Generalization is the idea that there's only one thing that is the cue. Usually it's the word. But your pet needs to learn that it's not all the other things going on. So it's not the location. It's not where you are standing versus them. It's not you looking at them. It's the word sit. Do they see the treat first? Is that how they know that when you say sit, they should sit because they'll get rewarded? Or can they still do it if you hide the treat? If you're wearing a treat bag. The order of cues, how many dogs have you known who, when you say sit, they sit and they immediately lay down because they're predicting what you're going to say next. They probably don't down unless you say sit first, though, because they've learned those things come in a particular order and they haven't learned down as a separate cue on its own. So everything in the picture becomes important, and we have to slowly separate out each piece until we just have the only thing that is the cue is the word. This is why we train sit with a handful of treats standing in our kitchen facing our dog, and it seems like it's going great, really, really good. And then we go outside and the dog is on leash and standing next to us. We're facing ahead. We say sit. We don't have treats in our hand. We don't move our hands. And our dog goes, I don't know what you're talking about. It's because they haven't generalized that word. And then you can add effort. So the D's, duration, how long does your dog need to stay? Distance, how far across the house or the yard does your cat need to come? And distraction, what else is going on? You can also start to ask for more behaviors in a row before giving the treat. So rather than giving a treat for sit, stand, down, sit, you might say sit, stand, down, here's a treat, sit, down, here's a treat, and ask for more effort between rewards. Always work at your pet's level. It almost feels obvious, but it's definitely worth saying. You need to have success to build on success. So if you are learning to play an instrument and you just jump into the song you want to play, even though it's a little too hard for you and you just make a lot of mistakes, if you keep practicing, it won't make you better if you keep making those same mistakes over and over again. You need to work at a level where you can practice correctly and successfully, and then make it a little bit harder. You'll still maybe make some mistakes, but ideally you only make them once, right? And then you kind of correct yourself and practice. Commonly we say practice makes perfect, but I really like to add perfect practice makes perfect. Flawed, bad practice doesn't make you better. Okay. You can think about what grade you're in or your pet is in. If they're learning 2 + 2 = 4, and you then say, great, you know math, here's a calculus exam, and they don't do it, giving it to them again won't help them do it. Giving it to them over and over again and then trying to punish them for not getting it also won't help. So really building them up at a level where they're successful. How you know you've gone beyond your pet's level? They're not successful. Consistent practice. How long does it take you to learn an instrument? A lot longer than 6 weeks of beginning training class, right? So training for really strong, consistent behaviors can take months, years, your pet's lifetime, the same as it can for you to learn complex skills, especially in distracting environments. All right, so we had those foundation behaviors in the beginning, but I want to think about what we might do with them. So attention and focus might mean ignore distractions as we walk down the street. It might mean leave a piece of food you see that sort of looks interesting. You might just ask for the animal's attention on you. Maybe it's just, hey, I'm going to ask you for something else. Can you please get ready? Pay attention to me. I'm about to say, go run through that tunnel. Go to place could be polite around guests. Don't jump all over my guests. Go be on your place. Maybe it's relax and don't bother the other pets in the house. Like, I know you just want to play, but the other cat doesn't. You go to your place and you wait there, and then I'll come give you some attention. Maybe it means stay out of the way. Stay out from underfoot. Stay out from away from the door. If you have a cat or a dog who likes to rush at the door, you might sort of as you come in, your hands are full of groceries, you say, go to your place, and send the animal away from the door. A target becomes a come when called. It becomes a move to a particular place, maybe get out of the way, come over here, or maybe step up onto the scale at the vet's office. I'm gonna put my hand here and you're gonna walk up and touch my hand. It could be a hold still. It's very common now to see trainers talking about teaching a chin rest behavior for a veterinary skill. And that would involve asking the pet to just rest their chin on your hand and hold it there while they are groomed, while their ears are checked, while they get injections, whatever. So that is a form of targeting. I put my hand out and you target my hand with your chin. Targeting can also be a part of greeting people calmly and confidently. You have a dog who wants to jump all over people. You teach them to target the person's hand with their nose. That is a behavior that can be reinforced that isn't jumping. And most people greet dogs by sticking their hand out. So it's an easy cue. For cats, we might teach the one finger greeting. So people will approach you and offer you your finger. You can touch your nose to their finger and be reinforced, and it becomes predictable and confidence building. So this is an example of a puppy using a go to place behavior. I can send him from a distance, he runs over and he plants himself. There's his friend, sort of just wandering around, and there's actually a cat on the beanbag there, but Duke just goes to his bed and he plants himself there. So Duke, being a puppy, was annoying people. He was annoying Dizzle. He was trying to steal Dizzle's toys and his phones, and he was just kind of being a brat. And this go to place, go to bed behavior was a tool for getting him to stop those sort of rough games when it became too much and he needed to take a break. All right, this is really big because this is important. People always want to know, especially with dogs, when can I stop treating my dog? When can I stop rewarding them? You can't. So behavior is motivated by consequences, all behavior. If the consequences change, the behavior will change too. So if you only get a payout on the slot machine every so often, you'll keep playing because it's worth it. But if it stops completely, eventually you'll stop too. And if you switch from rewarding every single thing to rewarding nothing, you'll stop really fast. So for example, you go to the Coke machine, you push the button, soda comes out, you drink it. The next day you go, you push the button, soda comes out, you drink it. The seventh day you push the button, nothing happens. You push a few more times, you stop and you walk away. If that happened a couple days in a row, you'd stop going to that vending machine, right? It's not working. So we want to transition from rewarding every single behavior to rewarding enough behaviors to keep the animal sort of engaged. We don't have to reward all of them, but we still have to pay. It's not shameful for your animal to want to be paid for their work. You want to be paid. If you've worked at your company for a year, you still want to be paid. If you worked at there for 20 years, you still want to be paid. So don't stop paying. Why do pets sometimes not listen? You're not working at your pet's level. It's too distracting. It's too much. You haven't trained thoroughly enough. You're asking for calculus when they know algebra. They aren't getting enough reinforcement. You haven't been paying enough to make it worth their while, or maybe you haven't paid in that situation. You paid a lot for sitting, but never for sitting when on leash on the street corner. They've just never gotten a treat for that, and you haven't told them they will. Or there's competing punishment that's happening. There's two consequences to a behavior, and they are seeking the reinforcing option, even though you might think you're trying to reinforce it, you're actually also punishing the behavior. So really good example, dog is playing at the park, they're having a great time, you call them to come, you've been practicing, they run over, you give them a treat, you put them on leash, you put them in the car. You say, oh, I reinforced them for coming. They say, I had to stop playing with my friends. I'm not coming next time. Okay? So making sure that the behavior is reinforced enough to stay strong. How do you do that in that example? Call the dog to come, give them a cookie, send them back to play. Do that most of the time, and then sometimes into play with a cookie, or in the play with a cookie, and then a game of tug, a game of fetch, something to sort of transition them over to the car. This happens a lot with shy animals. The animal approaches, they come, they sniff, we give them a treat for sniffing and approaching, great, and then as they're eating the treat, we try to go pet them and grab them and touch them. And they say, I walked up to eat a cookie, and then something I didn't want happened. I was touched, I was grabbed. I'm not coming up next time. And in fact, if I see that cookie, I might know better. So those sort of are why an animal might stop listening or never quite get to the point of listening to you what you want. All right, wrapping it up. Avoid frustration while you're training. It should be fun. It should be very, very successful. You need success and you need opportunities to reward your animal for the training to build. So you should be rewarding a lot. You can incorporate those skills into your daily life. You can use what your animal wants in any given moment to reinforce some behaviors. You don't have to ask for behavior every time, but it's there. You want to enforce polite behavior like a sit before you open the door. It's there for you to use. Try to think that the animal doesn't understand rather than they aren't listening. Okay, and then you can help them understand rather than trying to figure out how to punish them for not listening. Keep paying well. We're coming up to the end. I want to leave a little time for questions, but I did want to share some just personal stories about training and what training can do for animals. So 3 stories from my experiences where trick training, silly little simple tricks, had a really big impact on an animal's behavior and their relationship with their trainer, their teacher, their person, me in this case. So Sandy was a feral cat. She had come in through a TNR program when she was young and then been re-released. I put feral in quotes because she came around quickly enough that I suspect she had had interaction with people, but very, very fearful. When she came back in at age 10, at least age 10, into the shelter, she was very fearful, but also not well. She had to have her teeth removed. And so a cat without teeth cannot be released back out to live outdoors. So she needed to become comfortable with people, or she didn't have much opportunity. And she did slowly make progress. But the thing that really helped Sandy start to turn around was when she was introduced to the idea of clicker training and through some just really silly games. So in the video, you'll see her giving a high five because I'm the one teaching and I love to teach a high five. And this was actually an opportunity for her to come and touch me and interact with me and have a positive experience, build positive emotions, and learn to communicate with people. And it was really, really powerful for her, turning her behavior around and building her confidence. Hendrix was an adolescent Doberman, also very fearful, wouldn't walk on leash. While Sandy was showing some aggressive behaviors by smacking us with her claws, Hendrix just kind of avoided. He would keep kind of a circle around you just out of reach and kind of cower if you tried to touch him or get too close to him. And with Hendrix, same thing. I went for the high five because he caught on really quickly and I like to train that behavior. And suddenly he's approaching me to touch me and make contact with me. His body is loose, his ears are up, he's having fun. And then Philby, you all know Dewey, my current rabbit. Philby was my first rabbit, and he had some aggression issues. He would bite, he would charge, he was a problem child. And I didn't know much about rabbits, so I probably made some mistakes, as we all do at some point with our pets. But when I decided I wanted to clicker train him, because I didn't have a lot of experience clicker training and I didn't have a dog, so I figured I'd try my rabbit, it really changed our relationship, and he became much more confident approaching, hopping up to cuddle with us, soliciting petting and attention, and his negative behaviors went way, way down, not because we trained specifically to stop fighting, but because we're just building this relationship with him. So in this video, you're going to see Sandy, you're going to see Dewey, who is just adorable. You're going to see Hendrix, and then Philby at the end. So there's that clicker, and then the reward of the lickable treat. A verbal marker and treat there, a verbal marker there, And then that's Philby. So in that video, you got to hear some verbal cues and some sort of hand gesture cues showing the animal, I'm putting my hand out. If you interact with it, you'll get rewarded. You heard the markers being used. So the clicker in the very first part, you heard that sharp click. That was Sandy's clicker. And the others, you heard a yes or a yeah, and then always followed up with that treat. Okay, whew, that was a lot. I talked fast. I hope you found it interesting. I just want to say thank you to Silicon Valley Pet Project. If y'all haven't checked them out, please consider doing so on Facebook and Instagram or at their website, svpetproject.org. Foster, adopt, donate, really, really great organization working to help pets in the community. And my information there is on the right. So Canine Engineering on Facebook, Instagram, and the website. I just recently posted 5 how-to pages on the website that describe a lot of what was covered here, but it's a little bit more detail if you're interested in starting a behavior, stopping a behavior. Feline Engineering has the same thing, Instagram, Facebook, website, and a blog that has more than 50 entries. So lots and lots of information there that I hope would be useful to you. I also offer private one-on-one consultations about behavior and training issues, both for cats and dogs. Right now, much of it is being done online, though we're looking to open up in the coming weeks. So definitely reach out if you have any specific questions. And if you just want to talk more about the idea of training and some of the basics, I'd love to just chat with you, email or on social. It's totally fine. So now we have time for some questions. We are coming up the end of the hour, so I understand if people have to leave, but don't. If you want to stay and chat, that's fine as well. Anyone have any questions? No questions? Hopefully that's not because I lost you in my babbling on of things. Ooh, low calorie rewards. Fruits and veggies. So green beans are popular with some dogs. They're low calorie. Carrots, celery, fruits, strawberries, more sugary but less fat. You can try to make the dog's kibble interesting by combining it with some smelly treats. So cut up some hot dog, put it in a baggie with a bunch of kibble, kind of roll everything around and let it sit for a day or more. Chippy's not into anything healthy. So yeah, and sometimes building sort of a drive for food by mixing a lot of options together. So a little bit of hot dog or cheese, which is really high value to most dogs, and then kibble, some dry treats, all kind of mixed in. So what's going to come next? Most of the time it's going to be a piece of kibble, but sometimes the piece of hot dog can let you shift into a slightly healthier version. Let's see. Training on excessive barking at passersby or dogs outside. Yes, and success in behavior isn't always linear. Troubleshooting regression. So for barking outside, I always start with, is there a management tool we can use to decrease the behavior? So closing the blinds or moving the dog away from the place where they're barking as a management tool, because we perfect what we practice. So the more barking, the stronger the barking behavior gets. Otherwise, then it's going to be training some sort of alternative behavior. So a come away, come to you. If someone passes by, you might start with sitting with them at the door, or they look and you kind of reinforce them for looking. Or you might just say, oh, you barked once. All right, come get your treat. To the point where they say, oh, we saw someone outside. Let's run and get our treat. It kind of depends how much barking you're willing to put up with. Troubleshooting regression. So regression is normal. Like you said, training isn't linear. And For the most part, especially early in training, if you see regression, you want to think about what is different in this situation. So did something change that made it harder for the animal, or have I just not put enough repetitions in to really expect what I was hoping for? Sometimes just learning isn't straight, especially if there's emotion involved, fear involved. So you're gonna see some confidence building, and then for whatever reason, some kind of confidence loss and some confidence building again. We can also look at medical reasons for regressions in training. So if things seem to be going well and you have a behavior change that doesn't seem to be linked to direct experiences or training experiences, you might say, oh, is that animal not feeling well today? Or could they have something medically going on that's making them feel more vulnerable or less able to focus? Often with our pets, we miss that part, or we don't fully address it. We can say, oh yeah, they have something, but we're not sure what it is. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but it actually ties into our training more strongly than we want. So look at your management, look at whether you've just been training long enough to truly know, have you seen the repetitions going back to where you can have success and building back at the successful point again, and then medical. Trying to train one cat from aggressively playing with the other. Right now, I'm just disrupt the behavior by trying to recall and then treat, and then a clicker train session. So yeah, is this effective, or am I reinforcing the chase behavior? Really good question. So ideally, you're going to interrupt a little bit before the behavior gets problematic. So what is the behavior you see just before the chasing? You kind of see the cat crouch down, and you're going to step in at that moment, say, hey, Fluffy, come here. You want to play? Play over here. Play with this. You might also use the second cat's presence as an opportunity for the first cat to say, oh, the second cat is here. I'm going to come figure out where mom is to play. The more proactive you are in starting that behavior, the better. Sometimes just adding more play unrelated to the other cat. Food puzzles. We talk about cats, say introduce food puzzles if you haven't already. Can be really, really effective on that one. The way you'll know if you are starting to reinforce the chasing is you'll see the cat start the chase and then look at you. Are you gonna play with me now? That's a really good sign that they've sort of started to interpret your interruption as reinforcement for that chase, as they kind of start the chase and then they orient back to you for play. Most cats aren't probably getting to that point, but interrupting as far in advance as possible is going to be the most proactive for you, and also allow you to key in with that cat, engage them before they enter chase mode. It also might be something to ask is if they are doing this chasing when you're not there. If the chasing is successful 30% of the time, the other 70% you're there, but 30%, whatever percentage of the time you're not there and the chasing is happening. So do you need to separate those cats when you aren't supervising them, or for part of the day, separate them? Say first thing in the morning, they eat dinner and then they spend breakfast in the morning and then they spend some time apart, because that's a high trigger time for this chase behavior. So sort of troubleshooting when it's happening and how early you can intervene, and keeping track of what's happening so that you can see the number of chases go down. That's how we know our training is working. The number of problem behaviors is decreasing and the number of desirable behaviors increasing. All right. I know for many of you, those were partial answers, just scratching the surface. So absolutely go onto the websites and check out a little bit more and see if you can find a more clear answer. I'm here, of course, to do private consultation if you have those kind of questions that you want addressed in a more customized plan. And I'm happy to sort of chat via email and offline as well. Thanks, Lisa. All right, that is our hour. So I will say thank you and goodbye, unless anyone wants to throw up any more questions. There's all the information again. Send some thank yous to SV Pet Project. We are in the era of online meaning everything. So if you are able and willing to send some reviews to your favorite online location, we know Facebook has a review option for literally everything, including pet rescues and pet training behaviors. So tell us what you liked, tell us what you want to hear about next. And I'm happy to have been here. All right. Bye, everyone.